Welcome back to Home Cooking Hacks, where we will teach you how to do great things in the kitchen without a lot of gizmos and gadgets. And today we're going to talk about how to make a caramel syrup. So this is going to be an excellent topping for putting on ice creams, or you can put it in coffees if you make fancy coffees at home, topping for apples, or anything else that you can think of to do with a very good caramel syrup. This is actually a very easy recipe. There's a lot of differences, a lot of nuances. Some basic fundamentals. Any caramel syrup recipe that's going to call for brown sugar or coloring or anything else like that is not real. All of the coloration is caused by the natural reaction of real white sugar itself. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this, and you're going to see how easy it is to actually make good homemade caramel syrup. So first, the equipment that you're going to need, and this is going to be it. You're going to need a saucepan. If you have a stainless steel saucepan, it's going to be a little bit easier to see the coloration changes we're going to be looking for, but it's okay if all you have is a darker one like I have here. You're going to need a spoon to stir. You need a variety of measuring cups. I use a 1 cup, a 1/3 cup, and a 1/4 cup. And a teaspoon measure. You are going to need a little butter knife that I don't have set up here, simply to cut your butter. And you need some type of storage jar. The recipe that we're going to make will make a little bit over 1 cup. I'm just going to go ahead and use a 1 cup because when I make this, I always use the remainder that won't fit in my cup on either some ice cream or some apples right away. So our ingredients, you're going to want some white granulated sugar, nothing more than just regular white granulated sugar. You're going to want water. Use purified or filtered if you can. It's not going to be an absolute huge deal breaker, but definitely do that if you can. Okay, we need heavy cream. I get my heavy cream from a dairy where I get these nice glass bottles of real heavy cream. Any type of cream will work, just need heavy cream. Butter is quite important. I always prefer, of course, real butter, not artificial stuff. And then you're going to use some vanilla extract. And again, I prefer the purified stuff rather than the imitations or things like that. I'm sure margarine may or may not work. I don't know for sure. Extract is definitely going to work since all we're using that is flavoring. But this is all of the ingredients that we're going to need. Okay, as far as preparing this is going to be, like I said, a very easy recipe. We're going to start by putting 1 cup of sugar inside of our saucepan. Okay, and then we're going to use our water, and we're going to put 1/3 cup water in the pan. And now you are not going to stir it at this point in time. So we're going to crank up the heat, and we're going to go ahead and just crank this guy on up to high. I'm going to move everything else out of the way. And what we're doing is our first step is actually to caramelize the sugar, which is going to happen. So you can actually see here that we got this mountain of sugar back here. That's okay. It's all going to dissolve. You don't want to stir it at this point because you don't want to get any sugar up on the side edges of the pan because that's going to potentially recrystallize later on in a place we don't want it to happen. So right now we're just turning that on to high, and we're going to let that boil. And while that's boiling, we're going to go ahead and get prepped our next couple of steps. Okay, while our sugar is boiling, what we're going to do now is we're just going to go ahead and prep everything else. I don't need the 1/3 cup anymore. I can get rid of that part. So we're going to start with 2 tablespoons of butter, and I'm just going to cut this. I'm going to set it aside. What I'm actually going to do is I'll just go ahead and set it on my spoon because our next step, once our sugar's ready, we're just going to dump in the cream and dump in the butter. So it's nice and convenient if I just set that right on the spoon, set the butter aside, and put that away when we're done with our next step. And then what we're going to need is we need 3/4 cup of cream. So I'm just going to use a 1/4. I'm going to use 3 times, and I'm just going to put it right into the 1 cup container. Okay, and now we're just going to set this up here with our butter so that that's ready for our next step. Okay, so now this guy has been on high for a while and it's boiling. This will usually take somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. Now, some instructions are going to have a temperature to shoot for. We're not going to bother with a temperature. What we're going to do is we're going to look for a coloration change. So I'll show you what this looks like here over top. So you can kind of start to see around the edges, it's starting to get a little bit orange. What we're going to look for is a very deep amber color. It's going to look very much like honey. At that phase, we're going to remove the heat, add the cream, add the butter, and stir with our spoon a lot. Okay, so a few minutes in, you can kind of start to see that the bubbles are kind of getting up there, but it's taking them a little bit longer to break. That's because it's getting a little bit thicker. And that means we're getting close, but it's still very white. You can see how, it still has the white colors. There's still just a little bit of a faint coloration around the edges, but it's not nearly close to ready. Now, another fun tip is if you were to pour in the cream and the butter around this point in time, you'd actually get something very consistent with a cinnamon glaze. Very thick, very sugary. And I've actually used it before to top cinnamon rolls. It's quite amazing. But for caramel syrup, we're not quite ready yet. Okay, still not ready, but we're getting a little bit closer. We'll see there's a little bit of coloration starting around the one darker corner there. And then another way you can test this is kind of stick a butter knife in and just let it pop around a bubble. And what you'll start to see is how thick this is on the butter knife. It almost is going to resemble like a thick candy-like. Essentially, if you're familiar with making hard candies, a very similar process. So this will kind of become more like a hard candy type approach here. Okay, I'm going to turn the pan so you can kind of see it's really starting to get amber over on this one side over here. It's actually pretty much getting that color fairly consistently throughout. Once again, we're not quite yet ready, but we are very close. So we're going to go ahead and just keep the camera rolling at this point in time, just so you can kind of see that final staging moment there. You can clearly see now in the coloration. Let me dip this up here a little bit. Very clearly see that it's becoming an orange ambery type color. Once we have this kind of coloration all throughout, we're going to be ready to go. Now, if you like more of a burnt caramel, you'll let it go a little bit longer. If you like more of a traditional caramel, then we're probably very close to being able to stop it at this point in time. So what we're going to do, you can kind of see down here, very amber color. So we're going to go ahead and turn off the heat. I'm going to add my cream. I'm going to add my butter. And now we're going to stir. Now, of course, since I'm on an electric burner, I'm going to want to lift it off the burner a little bit to stir it around. Notice that we're stirring it. We're not stirring it with the spoon this direction because you're going to spill it. You're going to stir in this direction with the longer width of the spoon. That's going to prevent it from spilling out. And then we're just going to rotate the pan so I can get all of this direction, rotate back 90 degrees, rotate this direction. Okay, also don't forget to grab right around the edges. You'll see it's very thin right now. It is going to thicken up. You can see all of the coloration. It's looking like caramel, and we didn't add any coloration. That's because real caramel syrup is nothing but caramelized sugar, the real stuff. We're not adding any brown sugar. We're not adding any caramel colors. It's gonna look just like this. Of course, the only thing in darker color we're gonna add is gonna be that vanilla, and we're gonna get to that as soon as the butter is done melting. Then it should be cool enough. You never want to add your vanilla when it's too hot because it is a volatile substance, and if you add it when it's too hot, if you see the vanilla boil when you add it to the whatever the dish is, then actually all of your flavor has boiled out. So you don't want to do that. Okay, so you can see it's very much looking like caramel. We'll get a little bit of this Here, it's kind of going to be like a caramel hard candy if you can peel it off the spoon. At this point in time, we can probably add our vanilla. Adding 1 teaspoon, and then just make sure you mix it in well. So as this cools down, it's going to thicken up. It's going to be that perfect caramel consistency as soon as it's cool. So of course, I'm going to wait till it's a little cooler than this, but not a ton cooler to put it into my mason jar there for storage. Once it is in your mason jar, you store it in the refrigerator, and you can store it for about up to 6 weeks or so. Okay, so there you have it. Here's now our 1 cup mason jar of caramel syrup. We can use this for any type of flavorings, toppings, anything else that we're going to be using caramel for. So hopefully this recipe was helpful to you. Don't forget, take a look at our website at homecookinghacks.com. You can download an easy printable copy of this. Check me out on Patreon, patreon.com/TomM, that's T-O-M-M. And also I have a individual support channel called thinklifemedia.com, which covers all of my individual channels. So thanks for watching this Home Cooking Hacks, and I hope that you enjoy cooking in the kitchen.